Welcome back, everybody. This is your captain speaking, Captain Cosmo. And we are on to Chapter 3 of the PHAK. Chapter 3, which is aircraft construction. This is kind of a shortish chapter, but there's some good stuff to cover here. What I planned was we landed in Vegas last time, and we're going to take off from Vegas, fly over towards the Hoover Dam and over Lake Mead, pick up the Grand Canyon where it kind of starts off, and kind of zigzag back and forth over the Grand Canyon to our destination, which let me pull it up real quick. The airport is Papa Golf Alpha, which is Page Municipal. All right, so, and as usual, like last time, there's some weather in the area. So what I'm thinking is to do the clear skies again, the preset. So I switched over to the Warrior that I have from Just Flight, and it's supposed to have an autopilot. So I just found last time, I love hand flying the plane, but when I'm trying to look down at the book and every time you look up, you're off course. So that's what we're going to do. So I got everything kind of set up and ready to go. We'll hop into the cockpit here. I got everything turned on here. Fuel pump goes on. Let's crack the throttle. I won't do all the normal stuff going through the checklist. We did that last time. So let's just yell out our window. Clear prop. It would help if we turned the fuel on. All right. What is happening? With the fuel pump going, we have fuel pressure. Yep, fuel pressure. And what's happening? What did I not do right? Is it because we didn't prime it? Let me try priming it. Let me make sure I even filled this thing full of gas. Yeah, we have full tanks. It's at 100%. There we go. Parking brake is on. Let's turn on our avionics. Avionics is on. Sector Garmin is not coming on. Oh, you know what? I have to hit a switch a bit. There we go. All right, and as with the last time, I'm not going to be dealing with air traffic control. It's a little too much to talk to Microsoft's air traffic control and try to read the book and respond and everything. Maybe in a future episode, we'll be lucky enough to get into one of these new programs where it's all voice activated. Set our throttle to 1,000, and then we are looking like we are taking off from runway 19 right, which is just to our right. But we're going to have to go all the way down first. So we'll release our parking brake and let's start heading down that way. So I hope everybody learned something from the last episode. It was fun recording it, and it was also fun editing it. It was a little long. So that's why I changed it around and made it into 3 episodes. You know what? I think I missed our taxiway. Yeah, I did. Let's just go where the cars go. They don't mind, right? There's actually a taxiway entrance right up here. Oops, I think that was it. So let's do a U-turn. There it is. All right. Get on the taxiway here. This is Foxtrot. Actually, no, this is hotel. Foxtrot's on the other side of that black top right there. So I'm hoping some people will comment and talk about like cool little maybe 100-mile jumps that we could fly while doing one of these chapters. That would be awesome. Sometimes I find the hardest thing to do is really figure out where do you want to go? You know, where do you want to start? Where do you want to go? A lot of times I tend to stick with the West Coast because that's where I'm from, and I kind of know the area a little bit better than, you know, East Coast or something. So that's why I tend to fly from there, and it'd be neat to fly in other parts of the world, especially places that have, like, you know, really neat scenery. 'Cause that's what's so great about this this app, this Microsoft Flight Simulator. The graphics are just amazing. Okay, going a little fast here. Let's see, we'll go off to the right here. Stop right up here. Nine right. All right, we'll set our parking brake. Let's make sure that everything's turned on. Our landing light is on. Landing light is on. Anti-collision light is on. Fuel pump is on. Mixture is at full right now. We have 3 greens. And we'll just pretend that we already did the run-up. Nobody's going to know, right? All right, so we've been given clearance to take off. Release the parking brake. Oh, and I turned off the AI traffic today just because last time we kept having airplanes show up in the middle of nowhere. Line up on our center line here. And we'll go full throttle. 1, 2, 3. Full throttle. Alright, airspeed's alive. And I can't keep a straight line. It's funny, normally you have to really press hard on the right rudder. For some reason in the simulator, I have to press hard on the left rudder. And we're well over 65, so we'll go ahead and take off. And drift in a little bit. And we don't have to put up our flaps because we already have them up. That was a no flap takeoff. And I'm going to start making our bank to the left here. Oh. Get ourselves some altitude. And adjust our trim so that we can get our speed set. Try to hit about 80 knots. For some reason with this plane, I'm having to really hold the yoke to the right. And that's why I was using the Archer a little bit more. Alright, that's not too bad. We'll head out over Lake Mead. If I don't stop turning to the right or to the left. Lake Mead is to the right. Actually, it's right in front of us. But I want to see the Hoover Dam, which is kind of to the right. And we're going to be flying about 7,500 feet again today. And let's see if our autopilot works today. So. Oh, no. guess not. So we've got autopilot, but it wants to turn us the wrong way. Let's straighten her out. All right, there we go. And we have autopilot working. Let's see if it works. It sure looks like it is. It's going to 087. And we'll just keep our altitude going up here a little bit. About 5,300 feet. Another 2,000 feet to go. Lake Mead off in the foreground there. Take a look at the airport there. There's the strip over there. I know we keep talking about Lake Mead, so let's take a look at Lake Mead up front here. All right, now that we have our heading mode, this is great because now we can actually discuss what we need to discuss. And I can look at the book. So, just about 6,000 feet. And once we get to our cruising altitude, we will start discussing Chapter 3. So there's a lot to go over here. You know, it's construction of aircraft. You know, there's a lot of variables. A lot of it has to do with, you know, how they're put together and how to achieve lift, and, you know, keep that equal balance between lift, weight, thrust, drag, which are the four components of flight. If you don't know those already, make sure you memorize them because those will be on your test, I'm sure, because that is the key principle to flight. So in aircraft design, we have, you know, categories, classes, types of airplanes. Regular categories, you have normal, utility, acrobatic, commuter. Those are categories of planes. You have transport category airplanes, normal category, transport category, rotorcraft, manned free balloons, aircraft engines, propellers. So there's a lot of things here that kind of goes into the certification of an aircraft. So what happens is when somebody builds an aircraft, then the FAA comes in and they give you a type certificate, which basically shows that they were satisfied and it complies with the applicable airworthiness standards. So that's like the most important part right there. You want to make sure that you have that. Remember, your airworthiness certificate is always going to be in the airplane. At any point in time, any official may come up to you when you're on the ground, obviously, and they'll ask you to see certain documentation, and that could be one of the pieces that they'll want to know. They want to see that it's certified. You want to make sure that there's no airworthiness directives that the plane has to complete before going up in the air. Make sure that it is a good flying plane, because after all, you don't want to go flying in a plane that's destined for failure, right? And here we come on 7,500 feet. Like Mead in the foreground. Okay, and let's pitch down a little bit, and we'll pull back our throttle a little bit. See if we can set our altitude here for 7,500. All right, and we are set in cruise mode. This is so much better. Especially when you're doing the long flights, it's nice to set everything up and just kind of be like, okay, now I can look around, I can check my instruments, we can keep looking down, seeing the beautiful scenery below us. Or we can read our PHAK. So there's 4 forces that act upon an aircraft. I said them before. Lift, weight, thrust, drag. Each one of these basically is the exact opposite of each other. So what it says, 4 forces act upon an aircraft in relation to straight and level unaccelerated flight. These forces are thrust, lift, weight, drag. Thrust is the forward force produced by the engine and the propeller, and then drag is the rearward retarding force, and is caused by disruption of airflow by the wing, fuselage, and other protruding objects. We're going to talk more about drag, because there's a couple different types of drag, and then a couple of subcategories of drag as well. So thrust and drag are basically always pulling at each other in different directions. So you need that thrust moving forward in order to overcome the drag. And there is natural drag, just caused by the wind, the slipstream, things like that. Like it says, protruding objects as well. So your wheels sticking down, even the body of the airplane. So then we have weight, which is the combined load of the aircraft, the crew, the fuel, cargo, baggage. So you got to calculate all that together, and even in the big airplanes, they'll always do that. I've been on an airplane before where they've actually asked people to switch their seats because they thought they were going to have a different type of a load. Maybe few extra people got on board, and they were like, okay, well, we need them sitting here, and then you guys sit over there. Doesn't happen much because they kind of calculate it out ahead of time. They don't weigh you, but I'm sure you've seen them weigh your baggage. And it's not just, oh, you have a bag that's over 50 pounds, so we want to charge you an extra $100. They basically charge you the extra $100 because now they've got to remove 50 pounds of weight somewhere else. So the opposite of weight is then lift. And lift is the opposing downward force of weight. It's produced by the dynamic effect of the air acting on the wing and acts perpendicular to the flight plan or flight path through the wing's center of lift. So when you think about it, how much lift do you need to overcome the weight? You need 1 extra pound. So if your entire airplane is 3,000 pounds, that's the weight. You need 3,001 pound worth of lift in order to achieve flight. Hey, there's the Hoover Dam over there on the right. Oops, wrong way. I've never seen it in the simulator. It was kind of interesting to see how they put all this together. I've actually never really looked at Lake Mead flying over it. I've just always driven down that road that you see there going to the Hoover Dam. I think that's Henderson? Not sure. And the Colorado River there stretches off in the distance. And right up here, we're going to change our direction just a little bit. Go 076. There's that big bridge that goes over the gorge. It is so high up there. Once you're on the bridge, though, you're looking to the sides. You can't see that you're that high up. At least not if you're in a passenger car. But when you're down on the dam, the bridge looks like it's just a mile up in the air. Let's see. There we go. Alright, so let's change our heading to 076. That's pretty. So, weight and lift, like I said, they're in direct opposition. That's also why we'll get into weight and balance later on, and we'll talk about how to calculate the appropriate weight figures for a particular flight. We want to be able to achieve our takeoff nicely, not be overweight to where it's going to cause you to roll down the runway longer. And if you have a shorter runway, that could be a problem. Obviously, the lighter you are, the better. There may be times if you're going to fly in a little plane and you got 4 friends, 4 dudes that are big guys, and you calculate everything out, and you're like, yeah, we're not going to get off the ground with all 4 of you, so, maybe only 2 of you can go, or maybe only 3 of you can go. Maybe they leave the golf clubs at home. We don't take the baggage. So you gotta figure all that stuff out, because you want to be able to be lighter so that you can be your weight would be less than the lift. So the major components of an aircraft. So we have the fuselage, which is the main body of the airplane. We have the wings, obviously. You have the empennage, which is the entire tail section. This on the Pipers is called a stabilator. The entire unit moves up and down to act as the elevator. Some planes have just a stabilizer, which is a fixed piece in the back, and then it'll have other little flaps that basically go up and down, and that is your elevator. On here, this is our trim. This is our rudder. So the empennage, it's also called the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer. Like I said, we call ours the stabilator. There's different kinds of wings as well. Within the wing, you have wing flaps, and you have the spars that basically run lengthwise along the wing. These are the ailerons. That's what allows you to roll. Inside you also have what's called ribs, which are the little sections that go from the front to the back. And then between those ribs, they have stringers that kind of holds everything together. And then this part that's covering the entire wing is called the skin. Your fuel tank is somewhere up here in this area here. And then this is called the wing tip. Also within the fuselage, the frame is made up of longerons and struts. Then the body of the plane is called the bulkhead, and then it's also got a bunch of stringers that kind of tie everything together. Those are the inside pieces of the airplane. I hit the throttle, so it's slowed down a little bit. So there's different types of flaps that you find on different wings. You got a basic section, which... Whoa, why are we moving here? We lost our autopilot. Hang on a second. Trying to figure out why the plane decided it wanted to go into a roll. Very interesting. I think we stabilized there. My trim wheel is very sensitive. I barely touch it, and it puts us in a nose-high attitude. Let's watch the plane stabilize. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and then it'll find a nice, even area. Maybe. Alright, we had a little issue there where all of a sudden the plane decided to start rolling and I couldn't control the plane, so had to take back the controls, get us back in straight and level flight, start heading us back in the right direction here. It's not supposed to do that. Alright, we were talking about flaps. So flaps, you have the basic wing section, and then you have what's called a plane flap, which is just a piece that kind of goes down. That's what we have here. These sections here. That would be just a plane flap. Then you have a split flap, which you still have the wing like this, but then underneath it there's another piece that'll kind of fold down, and that's your split flap. Then they have a slotted flap, which allows airflow to kind of go inside the area of the wing, up and over, as well as under the flap itself. And they have a Fowler flap, which the wing is actually kind of curved up at the back, and the flap kind of extends outward from the tip. And then they have the slotted Fowler flap, which is the same as the Fowler flap, but it's a little extended even more, so there's more air can get through. I'm not sure how important it is to know all of the different kinds of flaps. But it's good to kind of get yourself familiar with it, know it, live it. All right, so we have landing gear, obviously. You need the landing gear. Let's go to my favorite shot there. And then the power plant. Power plant is also called the engine. So there are different kind of power plants on different kind of planes. The power plant includes both the engine and the propeller. So the engine's primary function is to provide the power to turn the propeller. And it also generates electrical power, provides a vacuum source for flight instruments. It also provides a source of heat for the pilot and the passengers. The engine is, let's see, if it would let me turn around. Here we go. Let's just take a look at the front of the engine here. So this is called a cowling. It covers the entire engine. It's got a couple of holes in the front, which allow for air to get in, and that aids in cooling the engine. There's also another intake right down here. So all that air comes in and the engine uses that air for combustion, and it also uses the air to cool the engine. Hey, look, I got a spiffy tie on. I'm flying by myself. I felt like I should dress up. Let's see, we have a ground speed right now of about 114 knots, indicated airspeed of 99. So we got a let's see, a 15 knot headwind right now. Trying to steer us back on course a little bit. So my plan is kind of following the Colorado River here. We just passed over Lake Mead, which is created from the Colorado River. And then the Colorado River is what goes through the Grand Canyon. So the propeller basically translates the rotating force of the engine into thrust, a forward acting force that helps move the airplane through the air. If you've ever looked at a propeller, it looks like a wing, and that's basically because that's what it is. Each blade is its own little wing. It's cambered the same way to make an airfoil, just exactly the same as you would on a wing. So you see this shape here is much like if you looked at the front, or if you looked at one of the blades of the propeller. This would actually be kind of a neat flight in real life. Turn back to 076. We're back on course. So a propeller is a rotating airfoil that produces the thrust through aerodynamic action. The high pressure area is formed at the back of the propeller's airfoil, and low pressure is produced at the face of it. So it uses lift in the same way a wing does. So as you know, there's low pressure on top of the wing and high pressure underneath it. That high pressure is always trying to overtake that low pressure. So it's the same thing with a propeller, where the high pressure is trying to get in front, so it creates that force. It helps pull the plane along. So it says this pressure differential develops thrust from the propeller, which in turn pulls the airplane forward. There are some airplanes that have engines in the back, and the engine pushes instead. So the propeller faces the rear, and the blades are turned 180 degrees, I would assume, to then push it or pull it differently. Or maybe that's an interesting one. So it says, there are two significant factors involved in the design of a propeller that impacts its effectiveness. The angle of the propeller blade, as measured against the hub of the propeller, keeps the angle of attack relatively consistent along the span of the propeller blade, reducing or eliminating the possibility of a stall. The amount of lift being produced by the propeller is directly related to the angle of attack, which is the angle at which the relative wind meets the blade. And the pitch is defined as the distance a propeller would travel in one revolution if it were turning in a solid. So those two factors combined allow a measurement of the efficiency of the propeller. Now, those are the main components of the airplane. So if they ask you about the main components, fuselage, wing, empennage, powerplant, wheels, landing gear. Those are the main things. Then you have the subcomponents, which would include the airframe, electrical system, flight controls, and the brakes. All equally as important. One question I was asked during my mock oral was, what are your flight components? Well, my flight components would be my ailerons, my elevator, and my rudder. Those are the primary things that allow me to fly the plane. Subcomponents of the lesser flight components would be your flaps, your trim. Those aren't necessarily needed to fly the plane. They sure make it a lot easier. I learned something the other day, which was kind of fun. Flaps, when a lot of these planes came out, like in the 50s and 60s, flaps were an option to the aircraft. Can you imagine? Like, I don't want to spend an extra couple $1,000s or whatever it was on flaps. I think flaps are kind of important. Definitely helps when you're landing. Give you a little extra drag. The book talks about different kinds of composites, composite materials, fiber reinforced materials, the metals, the plastics. A lot of these different types of epoxies, have different structural properties. The elements definitely can take their toll on different things. Depending on what kind of material is used in the construction of the plane. Talks about carbon fiber, generally stronger in tensile and compressive strength than fiberglass. Has a much higher bending stiffness, and it's also a lot lighter than fiberglass. Looks like we're coming up on the Grand Canyon here, at least the beginning of it. Start making our turn into the canyon here. It's funny because it feels like we're pretty low to the ground, but we're about 2,600 to 3,000 feet AGL. I know Microsoft did a lot of work on the Grand Canyon. I'm waiting to see some of that. It kind of looks like the topography is stretched, or the graphics are stretched over the topography, I should say. I've also turned my graphics setting down to like medium so that I can be able to fly and record at the same time. I don't want to have any stutters, even though it still looks like there still are some stutters. But that's all right. Just up ahead, there is a flight-free zone for flights. It says no flights below 8,000 feet. Well, guess what? I guess if we really wanted to abide by that, we could. We're only at 7,700. We're only 3 feet under the limit. This would be really nice to fly over in real life. It's kind of a bucket list item. I forgot to make our heading change. 120. So some of the reasons why we talk about composites and the metals used in planes is, you know, they can crack. You can get like a hairline crack, which could end up leading to something larger. That's why when we're doing our walk around, we look for dings, cracks, splits, anything that looks like it could be broken, no matter how bad it might be. Or small it might be. No matter how small it might be, it could turn into something larger. And the last thing you want is to put excessive force on something that might seem like, oh, it's a tiny little crack, and you get up there and you're putting these enormous forces on the wings and on the body and everything, and it just gives it the ability to crack even farther. Same could be said like if you're going into colder conditions and maybe it rained and some of that rain gets into it, and then it freezes when you get into the higher altitudes or even into an area where maybe there's snow. and then it freezes and that ice wants to expand. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it on the roads where the ice will melt during the day, and where the snow will melt, it gets into the ground, cracks, and then it freezes overnight, and next thing you know, you got big old potholes. It loosens up that material. So you want to be careful when you're dealing with composite airplanes, especially, and so take note of anything that you see on your airplane, even if it's got a metal skin. Just always remember safety first, right? These are some beautiful mesas out here. Still following the Colorado. One thing that the book notes is some owners are concerned about fuel, oil, or hydraulic fluid spilling on composite surfaces. They're generally not a problem with the modern composites using epoxy resin, but if the spill doesn't attack the paint, it shouldn't hurt the underlying composite. But what if the paint is a little faded or chipped? It could get onto that epoxy surface or the composite surface, and it might start eating away at the skin. And that could be a very bad day. Lightning strike protection is also an important consideration in aircraft design. When an aircraft is hit by lightning, a very large amount of energy is delivered to the structure. Whether flying in a general aviation aircraft or a larger airliner, the basic principle of lightning strike protection is the same. For any size aircraft, the energy from the strike must be spread over a large surface area to lower the amps per square inch to a harmless level. So if the lightning strikes, say, an aluminum airplane, the electrical energy naturally conducts easily through the aluminum structure. Then the challenge is to keep that energy out of the avionics and the fuel system until it can be conducted overboard. And it says the outer skin of the aircraft is the path of least resistance. In composite aircrafts, the fiberglass is an excellent electrical insulator, while carbon fiber actually conducts electricity, but not as easily as aluminum. So additional electrical conductivity needs to be added to the outside layer of a composite skin. This is usually done with fine meshes bonded to the skin surface. Aluminum and copper mesh are the two most common types. So they would put aluminum on fiberglass and copper on carbon fiber. That's really interesting, actually. Alright, so then we have control instruments. So the instruments that display immediate attitude and power changes and are calibrated to permit adjustments in precise increments. So that would be all these guys. We'll go over each one of these more in detail when we get to the instrument chapter. But we have our airspeed indicator, our attitude indicator, our altimeter. This is a compass or a heading indicator. Your turn indicator. A lot of times when you're flying, see how this little ball is kind of like in a water tube. And it kind of goes back and forth. If it starts going too far to one side, you step on your rudder and it pushes it back. That means you're in coordinated flight. If you're turning and you're turning to the left and it starts going to the right, you push on that rudder and it comes back, and it's called a coordinated turn. This one, I believe, is called the RMI. I don't have this one in any of the planes that I fly. Usually it's kind of like a cross between a VOR and a ADM. So you can turn this to your course, and it'll tell you how far, if you've got a radio beacon tuned in, it'll tell you how far off course you are. And this is your bug. See the little guy up here? It's moving. And it looks like we're starting to turn again for some reason. Not sure why the plane wants to just keep turning on its own. We are just slightly off course here, but that's fine. I'm kind of setting our heading to the course that I laid out. We're coming up on a really sharp zigzag, so I'll be kind of cutting the corner of it. Oops. So I'll show you here. This is where we're at, and we're just kind of entering this little no-fly zone. And right about here, I will cut the corner a little bit and pick up this leg here. We can actually start doing that now. I haven't shown you our full flight yet. Let's see how we're kind of zigzagging through the Grand Canyon. I think this is the main area of the Grand Canyon. And see all the big storms are going through there right now. That's why we're flying in clear skies. But this is the main part of the Grand Canyon, I think, that you normally go to. So your navigation instruments. Hold on a second. Why? dive bomb here. Just isn't powerful enough. Wants to keep sinking. Struggling to pick up speed. I think I got our heading set again, but maybe it's actually giving us some winds through these canyons here. It's blowing us around. I barely have 60 knots of airspeed. And our ground speed is 69, so very slight headwind. Not too much, but it just does not want to pick up any speed, so I can't really gain any altitude right now, and I'm back full rich. There we go. Lean out the mixture a little bit. We are at 7,000 feet after all. help a little bit. You hear the aircraft, the RPMs went up a little bit as I leaned it out a little bit. We're picking up some altitude, but not very much, because we just can't get that speed up. Alright, what I was about to show you here before all that happened. So we have navigation instruments. A lot of planes have the GPS nowadays. We have this Garmin over here. It's a different kind of a GPS. It's not the graphical style. And then we have our VORs. Like I said, this can be used as one of our VORs. Here's another VOR. This is a VOR. You have non-directional beacons, NDB. You have ILS, which is also an instrument landing system, which if you've flown in the simulator on the big airplanes, I'm sure you've probably done an ILS approach. And that's all there is to Chapter 3. So, we can kind of look at our instruments again. We've talked about some of these things. And then, of course, fuel. Speaking of fuel, let's change our tank. To our right tank. As we've used probably about 10 gallons worth of fuel. And here's our oil temp gauge, our fuel pressure, our oil pressure. This is our RPMs. Our magnetos. This is our primer to get the engine started. And here's our autopilot. You can see I'm on heading mode right now. I'm letting us get a little bit higher in altitude. Before I switch back on the altitude hold. Coming up on our line. Start doing our turn back to get on course. At 3 degrees.